So, if I introduce you to Phil Hall, and he's going to give a talk on applied AI.
Thanks for coming, and thanks Rick Hill. We were saying earlier on we were forked in the 15th century. We've got Phil Hall and Rick Hill. Yeah, so clearly there's some sort of very simple surname out there that we both derive from. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to run you through some slides, some ideas, a bit stream of consciousness. I've been to BrisTech a couple of times, and I love it because it's a melting pot. It's all sorts of people here. My particular passion for 15 years has been artificial intelligence, although I hate the term, and I'm going to explain why I hate the term and why it's rubbish. You know, I'm going to see if I can destroy it in the next half hour or so. Now, I was foolish enough to put my hand up when an email came around saying anybody wants to give a talk, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll give a talk on AI. And they said, brilliant, that sounds interesting. So what's the title? And I came up with this horrible title. You know, I mean, this is where I've been playing for many years, absolutely. Applying artificial intelligence, it pays my bills, 15 years now, experimenting with it, trying to bend it, trying to twist it, trying to understand it, trying to put hard and soft AI together, and fighting with numbskull academics who build systems which are lovely, but they won't scale. They're not enterprise strength, they won't work. They're just academic. And I have played quite seriously in corporate educational environments, but the bit that really gets me is the social cultural stuff. These are the kinds of people that I've been working with, and you'd be happy to see there's quite a lot of Bristol in here. The first serious system in education which was built was for secondary schools in the local area, English, reading and writing, Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, using a pattern matching system which was essentially an FAQ engine. It wasn't really very intelligent. But over a period of time, with some funding, and with these guys here, the city learning centres, and with the blessing of Vector, we make the thing happen. These people are dead, these people are dead, these people are almost dead. This fella here's an old fella, so up to a point he is nearly dead, but it was on the basis that David Perry was the grey-haired who had written about the potential for AI in the sort of 70s and 80s. And then later on, these guys here, Paul Hamlin, who is also dead as it happens, it's his foundation, although he's dead, and Roland Bourne, who are at Creative College up in London, which sort of irritates me, because I'd rather be working with a Creative College down here, have worked with Elsewhere. Elsewhere have been trying to build conversational systems since 2002. Now, I then looked at what I actually said the talk was going to do. Now this really scared me, because what happened was that James chased me up just before I went off for a week in San Francisco, which sounds lovely. But it rained. It was actually warmer in Bristol than it was in San Francisco, which is appalling. So I was over there for business, 2 days of business, and then the rest of the time, should I move there, should I not? Will the business that I'm involved in over there happen or not? This is healthcare in the United States, and I'm trying to apply artificial intelligence to the whole of healthcare, which is one of those, like, you have to have balls of steel to approach it. So, clanking towards here, I'm just going to identify that I stripped out some of the words, because I put so many words in the description of this, and then I was like, I'm dying here. So what I did was, I went back and I identified the rant part, yeah? The biggest smoke and mirrors since Y2K, privacy abuses. Artificial intelligence is being used to abuse privacy. Through the murk will be attempted in stars. And I was like, I definitely was focused on something else when I wrote this brief. And then the last bit, a balance between gambling and storytelling, financial markets and politicians. Yeah? So really, I'm sort of trying to approach this in a positive fashion. So I went back and I picked out some stuff which I think is more important. Artificial intelligence for me is about a layer. Right now it's between digital information and human beings. Artificial intelligence as an abstract academic notion is about algorithms and mapping the neural cortex and the stuff that DeepMind has been doing, all this very, very interesting stuff. But it's being applied to forcing people to click a backward. Could we not do something a bit better? So what I'm approaching from here, and this is a tale that I've tried to tell and do tell and try and enforce when I'm building systems, is that we need the context from mechanical and electrical engineering and social science. Now, I'm an engineer under the hood. I come from production lines because I fell out of education. And I went to engineering, and I worked in engineering for a while. Then I did cabinet making, and I hand-built beautiful pieces of furniture. Well, I thought they were beautiful. And then I went into anthropology and did an ethnography in a virtual world in 97, 98. And then I went into a systems integration company and learned the fundamentals of what I'm doing today. So that's why I think that what we've got here with mechanical and engineering concepts and social scientific concepts, the contextualization of such, we've got the ability to go, artificial intelligence is actually a load of marketing twaddle. Let's just clear it all out of the way and get down to what are we building and why. And that comes back to BrizTech. All these people in this audience here are not of a common theme. You're just people who are cool. You're people who are interested in the tech. Yeah? So, bottom line, humans are still relevance. So, let's go through a bit. Oh yeah, alternate titles. I think the first one stands for itself. I actually called the presentation Ranting Person versus Two. And the second point, artificial intelligence is dead. You'll see a structure which I put together at the end of the talk, which is about an extended intelligence. So if you take artificial intelligence as an academic notion and park it, you end up with what can we do that's useful. And debatably, extending people's intelligence by accessing information on the internet and in databases on your personal profile is going to be about extending. So, I think I've told you this stuff already. This was what I wrote in 2002. Available bandwidth, here. Digital consumer devices, here. General public's desire to communicate with computers in natural language. Sort of always been here, but the Internet of Things is going to drive a big wedge in the middle. So, 43 bills later. This is the history. Email response management systems. They didn't last long. Spam response. Chatbots. Bad habits, really. You know, everything under the sort of the suffix of bots has got bad news. FAQs. Done that, now that bored. Proactivity and personalisation, now we're working. That's what the educational systems were built on. Is that perceptively an intelligent thing to do, or is that an intelligence to add to people? Possibly. Trending and collaborative data, bear in mind this slide is probably 6 or 7 years old. Trending and collaborative data was before big data. And big data, again, you know, I'm sort of here on a rant, big data is just the internet. It's another word for the internet, isn't it? You know, cloud computing is just another word for servers, isn't it? You know, take the marketing thing out, let's get back to some kind of sensible, straightforward, what are we doing? So, the bottom line here, and I'm happy to say I've got a solution to this, is where is the open source, pattern matching, natural language processing, part of speech tagging, semantic everything. Where is that piece of open source software? It's there, and I'll tell you about it in a bit. So these are the systems. These are long time ago. BT hugs everybody. Yeah? This is a thing called Ms. Dewey, gorgeous looking woman, if you like women like that. And she was the front end of the early part of Bing. So this is somewhere between the paperclip and the new voice interface that you can't get to replace Siri in the UK yet because US American English is so different from English and name Cortana. Yeah? So this is part way between paperclip and Cortana. This is an FAQ system, essentially an expert system. Ooh, they all died, didn't they? You know, they fell out of favour. And this was the system that I was involved in at the time with a commercial organisation. Simple feedback loop. This is 7 or 8 years old. Simple feedback loop. Question and answer area. FAQs have changed in context. And then a pattern matching system in the background which wasn't particularly good. And then you get into business process, which again is acceptable. This is what I built, which was fun. This is inside Second Life, the museum, which was built instead of something which was actually new, which always sort of worries me with that. How did Second Life end up with brushwood in it as soon as the people finished it? And in there we built a system called Yakin, which was a freestanding chatbot system. won some awards a long time ago, and it was trying to do what people expect artificial intelligence to do, which is to answer everything, and to be better than humans, which is one of those, are we sure that's a good idea? And if it's difficult to train a human, why is it easier to train a computer system? You know? By 2019, there will be completely autonomous drones carrying the United States military. And when queried about this, a senior general said they were built by humans, so they won't go wrong. Well, that's definitely going to work, isn't it? So, anyhow, this was built 5 years ago or something like that. This is me as an avatar, and as you walked up to Yakin, we've done a little bit of stuff between the two of them, so as you got close, Yakin would get a little bit more agitated. Does that make that intelligent? Is that tiny bit of code intelligent? You know, surely, if you can identify different bits of code, and you say if you get more than 20 bits of code, that's very intelligent, you're sort of missing the point. It's one of those, what's useful? And I'm going to keep coming back to that, and I still keep coming back to that, which is why I'm trying to attack healthcare in the United States, which is a mad thing to do. Now, 3 links, I've got to show you the top one. I'm not going to show you this one because it goes on for ages. This is Apple's view in 1987 of how the virtual assistant market would work. And it's just so pie in the sky. This is about the hard work that some academics were putting into to map the brains of a worm, which is a bit of a low shot, so I'm not going to show that one either. But I am just going to wriggle across and show you this. Hopefully you can hear it from the back. Hopefully my phone will stream it from the front. Just count to 10 to see whether I'll pick that up. Refresh the okay. Yes, no. Alright, I think that's going to be a fail rather than ranting on. I can send you this link afterwards, I'll just describe it for you now. What it is it's 1972, it's Xerox PARC. And it's people having a really good conversation with a computer system. I mean, really good. Knows everything. Knows that it's the wife's birthday. Knows that it needs flowers. Renders a little flower picture really slowly. You know. So it's one of those, and it's a point that I've sort of made over and over many times that the issue is people's expectations. That. Hello Computer, Scotty Starr in Star Trek 12 or whatever it was. But there's a few people that are beginning, particularly on the privacy side, which I'm not putting any quotes up for, although I will have a dig at a few things in a moment. Eric Berniofsen is making a really interesting point here, very similar to Eli Parsia. Has everybody read the filter bubble? Has anybody not read the filter bubble? Oh, we must read the filter bubble, it's an interesting thing. The filter bubble in a nutshell is if you look at a computer and then somebody else looks at a computer, on the basis of your usage of that computer, the adverbs will change, the way that you access information will change. The information that you get from the internet is not in your control anymore. Yeah? There's a quote from Eli Parisa. You can watch his TED talk. If you read the book, he says the same thing about 4 or 5 times in the introduction. It's a very interesting thing, but he does say it 4 or 5 times. So watch the TED talk maybe, and he does say, it's a great quote, if you're not paying for a product, you are the product. There's a whole load of artificial intelligence underneath there. So a few of the people that I picked out here, this one's quite interesting. Ref the Mechanical Turk, the ability for companies to acid strip intelligence out of the general public. A lot of the Mechanical Turk stuff is coming from the developing world, that lovely old term, it's all rude in the same fashion. So what's happening here is there is this artificial intelligence machine learning is being primed by humans who don't necessarily appreciate what's being given away because they need to pay to eat. No Sharky, lovely stuff in there. Not ever seen any real AI, nor have I really, and I've been working in it for 15 years. I can mock a lot of good AI. I can get people to a point where they are talking about avatars in 2002 before the film, and because I knew that it was the descent of spirit in the matter in Hindu mythology, I could see from the transcript the person going, how does the system know this? But the bit that I really like is the cultural myth of artificial intelligence. It's like trying to break people from smoking cigarettes. If you're bad enough to smoke, and I am, I got the habit, it takes a generation. We don't really have the time. This one here, Jaron Lanier, who is a strange looking character, if ever you've seen one. White man with black man's dreads, and then I caught an up-to-date photograph of him, and he looks a bit like Jabba the Hutt. But he's got very interesting things to say, because the point he is making is about automation and the way that information and the power within the internet is being, this is very Harrison, reappropriated. I'm not going banging on about technological imperialism, we'll do that another day. Noam Chomsky is making some really, because last slide, artificial intelligence, mechanical turk. Get the information. So you're getting the information through an artificial channel. So let's just focus on this word artificial. It's just problematic to me. A lot of the stuff under the hard AI, which for me I've always been a bit about, you know, it's the kind of hard AI that broke the financial systems, I would suggest, you know. Hard AI, tweet, bang. So you have to be careful about what it is that you're actually applying hard AI to. And Noam Chomsky comes up the same point. Statistical models are dubious. Hopefully I'm not offending too many statisticians. Original work in artificial intelligence was way too optimistic, too little information. I talked to Hugh Liedner, who runs what's sort of accepted as a Turing test at the moment, although Kevin Warwick and Hun Shah from Reading University would disagree passionately. And I asked him when I went down to see them for the 10th Alice and the corresponding Liebner Prize, I said, why don't you have two Liebner tests? Why don't you have one that's useful and then one that just chats? And his view was, well, if it knows how to chat, then it will be useful. And it's just like, no, you idiot. No, it's like, it's not the way that it will work. There's a difference, I believe, and there's a fork, which is useful AI systems, which aren't artificial, they're extending, and then non-useful artificial intelligence systems, which are like Siri, you know, or Cortana, or whatever it is, or Talking Angela, you know. Those are fine for kids. The paedophile thing's a lie, by the way, because I know the bloke who makes it, it's just not his thing at all. But so the points he's making here, the last point I think is the most important point. The right level of abstraction of the issue of artificial intelligence and look in the right place. Usefulness. Best artificial intelligence out there. This is me having a dig at Google. Yeah? They have the best artificial intelligence out there right now. For various reasons. Mainly because they managed to control the flow of advertising spend on the internet, and then they created a position, and I can bring a screenshot of it, they created a position where the screen that you can see everything in a very vaguely coloured area costs the companies $5, £5, you know. Underneath that screen, below the fold, is the real internet. So these suckers have not only captured and set this line for an artificially intelligent front end, they've also put this in place. There's a friend of mine who says that this don't do evil is missing a little bit of punctuation, which I think has always been a truth here. So what I did was I just highlighted this. This is English UK policies, same in America. And don't get me going about patents in America and the patenting of information and all that stupidity. You give Google worldwide license to do anything with anything that you put on their services. Ripple. The rights that you grant are for what sounds like a good idea and to develop new ones. So really, not only are they controlling the flow of the advertising spend, milking the world on the basis of cultural imperialism, or just plain greed, but they're also nicking absolutely anything they want, whenever they want it. If you are not paying for a product, you are the product. So, let's get back to the point. That's the major rants out of the way. Yeah? The point for me is resetting the bar. Generational effort to take a whole load of different people and point them into the creation of an extended intelligence. And where is that soft spot going to be? Games, Bristol Games Hub and people like that doing really useful stuff. Mobile interfaces, Siri. I've got mine trained to tell me to scratch my arse every Friday at 8 o'clock in the morning. And that's the best thing that I think I could have done with it. Healthcare, people are soft in that area. Or the sofa, literally. You know, ambient temperature, the AI that's built into the voice-to-text recognition, all that clever stuff. So, building with purpose, not making purpose of, and I wasn't sure what word to put in there. You know, right now I think we're sort of doing ourselves out of business. So, some systems, anyhow. I have built systems. This is from 2002, back before big data, and it's a very simple education system. This is a system that underpinned the Bristol secondary school stuff. So you've got different user types. You've got a server structure in the middle. It's not pretty. Anybody worth their salt, you know, would throw it out the door, but it was useful because it was built in collaboration. The analysis and development loops up the top here were informing teachers from the statistics side to be better at delivering secondary school education. What we did also find was that the kids who talked to the system ended up giving more respect to the teachers. And one of the teachers said that one of the school kids came up and said, I'm not sure how she phrased it, but the point was that they got more respect for the teacher because the teacher was saying the same thing as the computer was. And the computer was a little green blob, that swallowed the screen if you were really rude to it. Logical architecture. This for me is a conversational learning environment. Again, identify who the user types are and then look at what the flow of information is. So I build a system according to that schematic. This is a more normal looking schematic. This is underpinning the shift system. So this was about teaching kids to get into the creative industries. And identified up on there is money in areas which is explicit, not implicit. That's a straightforward feedback loop. That's a more complicated one. This was something I put together for the lecturers at Ravensbourne. And what it is it's one slice of a chat script system, which is the open source system I'll come to in a moment. And these were the steps through the learning journey. When you got to it, you would learn through people's steps through this learning journey how to represent these according to their needs. So there is a self-learning step there. That's hard AI, but it wasn't built like hard AI. It was built in a way that was logical and mechanical. Once they'd gone through that process, they then built their scratch site, which came down to a human, see, real human, who then gave some feedback, and then they went into a new review, and the post-human review went into the top of the learning again. So it doesn't have to be opaque, it doesn't need to be a black box. It can be if you could imagine it. So, NLP, natural language processing, which is a term which is useful and is the background for why you're getting certain adverts and why your voice will or won't work, and if you're Glaswegian, why nuance won't work, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. The other companies out here I've got up here, IBM's Watson, is that AI? Or is that just really quick data searching? Wolfram Alpha, it's an interface layer, isn't it? It's not AI, not sure. Artificial intelligence modeling language, terrible thing. Built on the premise that people are stupid and that they will ask for things in very simple ways. It's a very simple pattern matching system. FAQ systems, they always get driven towards how to board people in large corporates who can leave the organisation and not walk away with the skills. So All of this is called artificial intelligence, but it isn't actually, apart from possibly ChatScript. ChatScript, built by an American propeller head. He's built a system according to games strength systems, so it's all built in C++, C and C++, and it's riotously quick. The parsing which he can do in document reading, which is what IBM does, Watson does, he does at 30,000 tokens a second on a laptop. Stanford, on their online, works at 28 tokens a second. 10,000 concurrent users on an 8-core machine, which isn't very fussy really, on the basis, and I know this for a fact, that somewhere between 3 and 5% of people on a web page are going to be communicating with a virtual assistant or chatbot or whatever you want to call them. 10,000 concurrent users on a baby machine is brilliant. Done. Spanking software. Implicit regression testing. You can go through, you can teach it something, you could go through a learning journey, and it will hold that and then reuse it. If you can imagine a conversation, and I have done, because in 2010, when elsewhere was a dozen people on the payroll and a dozen contractors across America and Australia and here, it was just, it was crazy, and I wasn't doing any build work, I wasn't really enjoying it, and the software didn't work, and it went bang, and I walked away, and I was like, I've had enough, I'm going to do something else. And then I fell across ChatScript, and it's just reinvigorated my desire to use this engine to build really, 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 really complicated things by going to somebody like Rick Hill and saying, how did Jesus do I turn this into an agile build? And you'd be like, that is an epic, and I'd be, well, let's get on with it. So for me, there's a, what do we do? Now, just going to quickly flesh through some systems which I've built. Are they intelligent? Are they artificial? Are they useful? This was the first take on the TeachBot system. Question, answer, context according to how we broke the curriculum up. Very simple colour coded, rewards on the bottom of the screen. The most interesting things that came out of that was the kids that got engaged with it. Because they could see that they had to get a star on the bottom, the wildest of the kids skipped tea break, where they had fruit drink break, and sat down and just worked through the system as quick as they could. We were finding that people in any given, excuse me, in any given lesson were asking hundreds of questions of the bot. Now, probably 60% of those questions were rubbish. But the way that the system is built is a three-dimensional structure. And I've not showed you, excuse me, or bored you any three-dimensional structures that mull over the day. So what happens is that as people fall away from the topic, the system brings them back in again. What we also did is we built a system where the user was on the journey was held as a variable, and then the answer to the text was then concatenated and delivered back. So go back to Hugh Liebner, can you break the Turing test, apart from the fact that it's one of those anticipation of humans and talking to computers in parallel as peers, is, forget it, let's move on. You get a chance to actually break that barrier, like the cinematographer at Fourth Wall, people suspend disbelief. And in here, a whole lot of structured and unstructured chat. All of these flew about. This is early jQuery stuff. And then this was our delivered area where you could put any kind of supporting content. And we moved on. This one, a guy called Taryn, who's at the back of the hall, helped us run this, and I appreciate that, Taryn. This one is an HTML5 setup. All these widgets are free floating. You cannot add any words to this website. All the words are populated from the conversation you have with the bot. All these variables. There's a Twitter feed. No, that's not true. So the Twitter feed you input yourself. Video output. And what we've done here, this was quite a hairy-ass prototype system, and it is artificial intelligence on various levels, is we broke down with the user's participation what it was that we wanted to do to get kids through learning WordPress and into creative industries, including a little bit of, sorry, you're just not creative. Try someone else. And we created this very, very simple site. Homepage, network page, just go back a second, progress page, portfolio page. And the idea was, and this was just before the government tipped a whole load of money into apprenticeships, the idea was that this would be somewhere where kids in the Greenwich area in London could show what they'd done, and those could then be put out to local companies who were possibly a little technophobe, and the kids could help the companies, and then the government went and poured a whole load of money into the apprenticeship system. And what we ended up doing with this was really bending the edges of what education is supposed to be and could be, and then a MOOCs popped up. So much though I love the market that I live in, I did tend to be having my fingers in stuff when it was breaking. You know, so I go to education and MOOCs pop up. I go into trying to deal with like training and educators. Apprenticeships come back for a bite. But these people here, brilliant people. This is a lady, Professor Liz Jetson, set up the communication structures at the BBC. Stephen Hackle, if you know the education sector, he's a crazy mofo. He is somebody who's been trying his hardest to break education all the time he's been in it, and he's currently in a serious place in the middle of government, which I think is a good thing. These two guys here, Mark and Anna, Mark is a specialist in avatars and people's perception and reality and engagement, the ability to build trust with avatars. Is that artificial intelligence, building trust with an avatar? I think that probably is. And then Anna Peachy was at the beginning of the Open University in Second Life. You can imagine how much trouble I had trying to get some consultancy work done with these people. Because much though you love them, and I do, they're all mates of mine, the only reason Anna's not a doctor is that she never stops enough to actually write the thing, jump over the hurdles. It was actually about taking the intelligence in education and making it artificial. It wasn't. It was about extending it. It was about finding the generic structures. This is what I'm doing in healthcare in the States now. My hair, if I had any, which I don't, would be coming out. That's a seriously complicated system. The participant-led research, that's an academic approach. It's a really good one. The pattern matching, when it comes down to it, is less important. The flow, the logic through the experience is what's really important. That's almost a Foucault point there, which is social science. So the functions of the conversation, not even the questions and answers, are what the point is. Now, does anybody remember expert systems? Did anybody work in expert systems years ago? There's some grey hairs in the house. Yeah, Taryn's laughing. Yeah, I expect Taryn. Yeah, there's another hand going up in the background there. For me, it's one of those, let's lose the marketing bling. Let's get down to, is it buildable? And why is it buildable? And should we, the humans, be building it? So, artificial intelligence. I hope that you all agree that it's dead in the water. Yeah? As a term, it's meaningless. It's marketing bling. IBM Watson, if you think about it, they're not trying to do AI. They're trying to break search engines. They're trying to create a conversational layer between valuable parts of information like healthcare. What they did when they did Jeopardy was they did the tech to get from point A to content. And now what they're looking for is content, yeah? They've put $1 billion into that. Statistical modeling is creating bell curves for the sake of it. For me, it's inflexible. You know, if you put a whole load of rats or a whole load of monkeys on keyboards, we know how that works. So the next level for me, this is almost the end of the presentation, which has gone a little bit better than the last one, because while I was talking to these healthcare people, I showed them stuff like this, and you could see them glazing over a little bit. This is started work, it's still a work in progress. All the points around the outside are all different techniques and methods and companies and software as a service and platforms and whatever it might be. That, for me, is the nub of it. That's hard AI, that's hard AI, that's not, but it's being abused with AI to give you all the ads. Big data is just the newest method. Peer search and review, sort of hard AI? I'm not sure. I mean, the peer search and review for me, was it 80% of all the media consumed by teenagers is created by teenagers. Semantic search, I love the semantic search idea, I love the Web 3.0 idea, and then you look underneath schema.org and it's Google again. So, then last slide. When I was a kid, on I'm 51 now. There was big discussions about whether Max Headroom was real or not. You know? I mean, it was a big to-do, you know. And this one here, Ananova, sold a long time ago for £95 million. It was supposed to be the definitive virtual assistant. Beautiful, and it is still a good avatar. It's not near the uncanny valley, it's a beautiful looking avatar. It never ever worked again. And I don't know whether this is true or not, but I heard that they didn't sell them an editor. They sold them it. They didn't sell them the ability to evolve it. So, that's it. A ranting through artificial intelligence. Any questions? I doubt it. At the back, sir.
An excellent rant, thank you very much. It was very entertaining. I was interested in what you had to say about pattern matching. I didn't quite catch what you said, and I think you were being negative about it, and I want to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, no, that's a good pushback actually. Pattern matching, the way that I used to build systems when I had a less powerful pattern matching system was that I used to start with this shape here. And this was perfect sentences, sentence fragments, keywords, and then responses on topic, or no idea what the hell was going on. Yeah? And I built and trained a whole load of people, dozens of people, to do that kind of work. Yeah? Pattern matching, the way the words work next to each other, according to the syntax that you have to give and or if then, or alternates within a phrase or something, is a black hole. You know? What I found was, with some of the corporate systems that were built, a year or two in, they brought the pattern matching together so that they were always furry. Yeah, maybe a hard AI person could have done some fuzzy logic stuff and sorted it out for me. It's just my personal ignorance, you know, that created the issue. But I found that people were pattern matching for the sake of it. They were pattern matching to fill the time to get paid. Yeah. And then as I got into, and the pattern matching, the logic I had there was very simple. Yeah? It was in order or with spaces between it. I don't think it did have a number of spaces between it. You could have alternates, so you could have do I want like love, and then you could have a structure under here which collated the whole words or phrases together. Now, JavaScript gives me WordNet to play with. It gives me a past speech tagger that I can use in real time. So and it was built by a hardcore coder who thinks in C and C++. So the creations of patterns are more scripting than linguistics. Yeah. So the point I was making there was that my experience is the best way to push people through a conversation which has a structure is to focus on the structure, not on the pattern matching of the words once they come to you as text. Yeah? Voice to text is a different thing altogether. Yeah? And I've been fighting with that one recently. So that was the point I was making. Yeah? So.
At the very end of your presentation, you mentioned that you like an idea of semantic search.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me, do you think that today's Google search engine is actually better than it was a few years ago, 5 years ago?
That's a good question. When the knowledge panel came in with Google was about the same time as the filter bubble, the book The Filter Bubble, the surrounding issues were bubbling up, no pun intended. I think I'm actually the wrong person to ask, because strange though it might seem, I don't use Google. I don't use Google Search, I don't use Google Maps. Once in a while I swim about on Google Earth, but if I had an alternative I would use that as well. So I've sort of lost touch with it. I use the worst named search engine in the world, DuckDuckGo. There you go. Right. Some of those, surely they could have called it something better than that. You know, it's like, but anyhow. So I think where we are at the moment with the semantic search is my experience with Google before I stepped away from it, because I was just getting sick of it, you know, because I could see what was going on the screens. I live on a lot of screens, yeah. Literally a lot of screens, like 4 22-inch screens. So maybe I can see things because I have that much visibility and everything, or maybe I'm just crazy. So I think that the Google thing was getting better. I really got to the end of understanding what Wolfram Alpha's latest pitch was, and that for me, I don't care that he's a European rather than an American. That's not the point. The point is that he's thinking symbolically, and he's looking at access to structured internet. But there's two parts there. There's IPv6, so we're all stamped in the back of the head, and then the second point is about the structure of the internet, or a way to control, IBM Watson, the way that unstructured data is brought back to us in a semantic fashion. Tommy tried that, burned a whole load of money, God knows what happened with that, and failed dismally. So the simple answer is yes, and the semantic web is definitely going to come towards us. I think maybe one of the hearts of what I'm trying to get across here is how black do we want to make the boxes that connect up all of the bits? Where do we want to keep our hands on or not? Yeah.
Did you play with Wolfram language lately?
I haven't had a chance to. I've been busy doing, structure and culture. I'm like, can't wait. Have you had a chance to have a fiddle with it?
Very simple things. I just tried to ask them, draw me an elephant on the boards or something. It didn't work. Now I know Wolfram languages for other purposes. I would just I watched the video of Mr. Wolfram and involved the language itself can do some funny stuff.
Yeah. I wonder whether stuff like Wolfram or IBM Watson, if it continues to evolve out from Jeopardy world into our real world, whether they will be the equivalent of, a pub talk. You're chatting to your friend and you're nattering about something and you're like, do you know about that, whatever, way down, hang a guttering back up on the roof? And they say, well, you need to talk to Rick. Yeah. So we go and have a word with Rick, and Rick goes, and these bigger systems are going to take longer. Maybe there's a Moore's law thing that might or might not work. I tend to approach all of the build structures, which is why I still have a roof over my head, although my guttering was falling down from the front of it, and the answer to that is a 4-inch nail, blagging the bloke who was hanging off of the scaffolding next door to put a 4-inch nail through it. And that was the way through that way. So I think that I approach these things as what are the chunks, what are the engineering chunks, and for me the semantic stuff is big pipe stuff. It's the bazooka, I don't think it's ever going to have the sensitivity of something which is built with personality, objective structure, humour, but then you're getting back into bad chatbox again. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's a Japanese hypothesis that I've forgotten the name of, bird box, but we found that when we got them looking similar to human beings but not the same, but people didn't like them. Do you find the same with avatars and textual AI, talking to AIs, but people, when you get close to human beings, they start to reject them?
That's a really, really good question. I'm hoping to have some time to get into an academic view of this, and if I end up doing this work in healthcare, I'm going to be in that kind of area where they're going to want to throw science and stuff. I had a conversation about the uncanny valley for the creation of an avatar fit for that purpose, and at the same time, the creative fellow there, who's using Siri to dictate his messages to his email, and I were having a conversation about how that changes the way he communicates. So those are sort of similar. To answer your question directly, I believe it's not scientific. I believe that people are horrendously more comfortable talking to computers than they are to humans. They will open up in a way that they won't do talking to a human being. There's an anonymity thing there, which works in contrast to the lack of anonymity which we have in the internet more broadly with the filter button and so on. How are the pizzas going? Any more questions?
Picking up on that point you just made, I think recent medical research has found that too, that people are much more open about their medical conditions and exactly what symptoms and very personal things they can talk about to a machine. It's much more easily than they can to a doctor. Yeah,
now that's an interesting thought in and of its own right, isn't it? Is at what point does the intelligence in a computer system becomes safer. I mean, there's, I was going to put one algorithm up, and it was the trust algorithm that I came across recently. And I just stuck it in the folder for the build that's coming. And it was a very nice little, neat little algorithm. As certain things change, you get more trust between myself and another human being, so I'm going to turn that into a system which is identifying that between a human and a computer. And then I'll track that, and that will work on business purposes. But I also got some responses. Some of the bad side of that science, they pointed some virtual assistants at Vietnam vets, and there was a response I'd seen in a transcript, and it was something appalling, like, have you got any friends? And the Vietnam vet says, no friends, no family, nothing. And the bot comes back with, it's great to have friends. It's like, oh no. It's like, start simple, logic, engineering, it's like frameworks, metal, wood, it's like put the wires on top, do piping. So, any more questions? Yes, sir.
Do you have kind of pointers to resources that all sorts of these aspects of AI into their own products? Or?
Sorry, run one again?
If I wanted to incorporate some aspect of AI into a project I was doing,
yep.
Do you have some sort of starters, sort of beginners, as it were?
Pick it up, yeah. Traditionally, there was only one kid on the block, unless you wanted to do to have a conversation with a commercial provider of tech, which was thousands of pounds for a license, and then ongoing relationships for 2 years, and blah blah blah. And that was the AIML system, which I'm being rude about, but it was the only thing on the block for a while. So you can go to websites like Pandora bots, and you can take a shell of a system, which can be really uncontrollable, and then try and force other information on top of it. Yeah? If you pick up ChatScript, which is my preferred open source system, you end up with a skeleton for different topics, and you end up with all of the keywords and ontological stuff in the background, so you can identify which of the skeleton points you want to deal with, and that's straightforward. And then with reasonably simple logic, you can build up something which will ask questions and answer questions. Yeah, logs are fairly straightforward. It's reasonably easy to set up. It's a fellow called Taran when he's not busy, which is never. He'll be good to do the work for you. Yeah, seriously. The ChatScript stuff is easier to control. Then there's a bit there which he calls quibbles, and that's the bit which is the personality stuff. That's dangerous, and there's loads of it. And pattern matching is very arcane, it's quite esoteric. So you could go to SourceForge, find ChatScript, download ChatScript, get a half-decent technical person, contact me here if you need a steer. I'm not doing a sales thing at all. I'm just telling you guys what I'm hoping, and ladies, interesting, unusual, slightly inflammatory stuff. So yeah, go to ChatScript. Download the raw knowledge base. He's doing a good job, is Bruce. Who's the fellow who runs it? Bruce Wilcox. And then go for that. If you go to a place called chatbots.org, which is a bloke called Erwin van Loon, Dutch bloke, unsurprisingly, he's collated together a whole load of people and all of the chatbots in the world. He's done useful stuff like named the 96 different ways that people use the term chatbot, which comes back to my primary focus here, which is like, let's just start again with a different word. So that's the answer. Go to SourceForge, search for ChatScript. Yeah, have a look. Yes?
If I wanted to incorporate a class speech tagger or a chunker in my website, would that be the same place? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Go on there. There's a decent sized forum there where a lot of this stuff is already dealt with. There's a lot of information there, but just dive in, there's nothing you can't do with it as an engine. After a little bit of arm twisting from Bruce, I gave him a testimonial on his website, and I coined it as a Linux level moment for NLP. And I honestly believe that. I've been in this market for 15 years, so I've probably got a Linux level moment. This is where people could look at it as an engine.
For NLP?
For NLP, for natural language processing, yeah. not neurolinguistic programming, which is a different rant for a different day. Any more for any more? Okay, good. Thank you very much for listening.